Greetings, friends. I'm very excited to be speaking with you today about what I feel is the most powerful astronomical and therefore astrological alignment of our lives. The 12-spoked wheel of order rolls around and around the sky and never ages. 720 suns in pairs rest on it, O Agni. This from the oldest scripture known, the Rig Veda. And it's said within the Yodish astrology tradition that these 720 suns on the 12-spoked wheel of order, which of course is the zodiac, are the 2 half degrees, that every degree is really a pair of half degrees. But I wonder if perhaps we're speaking about 2 360-degree circles. And I feel there's truth to this because of this same passage's later text, which reads, 2 birds, friends together, friends joined together, clutch the same tree. One of them eats the sweet fruit, the other looks on without eating. I feel this is a description of the zodiac of the heavens and the zodiac of the earth. And I feel that we need to tune into what they both are and see how they align over time, to see how these 2 birds face one another, if you will, for us to tune in to the turning of the ages. And that's what this talk is about. Before we launch, though, into that headspace, I want to read this from Crazyhorse. We all know that I'm recording this at a really challenging time and an exciting time of great change, and a time that's been prophesized throughout time and in many ways. And this is one of the prophecies that speaks most to my heart. The one called Crazyhorse spoke this just days before he was murdered. Upon suffering beyond suffering, the red nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world, a world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations, a world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day, there will be those amongst the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity among all living things, and the young white ones will come to those of my people and ask for this wisdom. I salute the light within your eyes where the whole universe dwells, for when you are at that center within you, and I am at that place within me, we shall be one. We're now 7 generations later. The sacred hoop of stars hosts a very powerful alignment, June Solstice of 2020. The sun on the cross. What do I mean by that? I mean, the sun crosses every day, right? Rising on the eastern horizon, crossing the ascendant, crossing the threshold of the unseeable and the known. This is an image I took in September of last year from the Pinaka, the Pinks in Greece, where it said that democracy began. And here we see the sun rising through the pillars of the Acropolis. That same day, I saw the sun set into the second pyramid, Giza. And we should know this is a sunset, not a sunrise, because that Sphinx that you see there in the center at the bottom always looks due east, waiting for an image of the new age. So let's take this into the night. I call my work sacred astronomy. And I think I'm often known as this sky guy. But I'm not one for telescopes per se, although I certainly value the information that's coming our way from the astronomers today. For me, it's more about widening the gaze and reflecting upon the heavens. I believe astrology is so much more than some symbolic language alone. I believe astrology is the poetic breath of nature. And when we renature our astrology, we will remember the roots of the rules and the proofs of the equations we use. So I fancy traveling around to sacred sites and seeing these star alignments, and I've been fascinated over recent time to find that some of these star aligned sacred sites are not that ancient, maybe some of them not so sacred. We'll spend some time at the end here with one built in modern times today. I'm not about dropping the telescopes on sacred mountains, right? Or like extending and narrowing the gaze through this tiny little view. I mean, this way we're losing our connection to the astronomy that the ancients knew, Earth astronomy. And it's my devotion to reconnect to that, to find my way to the star songs heard in times before the written word. When we narrow the gaze and erase the zodiac from the astronomical diagrams of old, you know, the astronomers today, it would seem, in doing this, have limited their understanding of astrology to think that it's actually what can be found in the pages of Cosmo magazine. And the weirder thing to me is that the Cosmo magazine scene, at least at some time, seemed to think that NASA should be an authority on astrology. Oh, wait, sorry, wrong article. I meant to show this one. People are panicking because there's a 13th zodiac sign. Everything you've ever known is a lie, etc., etc. September 2016. NASA's January, yet for some reason now viral announcement, there has been an ignored 13 constellation in the zodiac all along, has the internet panicking. With the addition of the constellation into the 12 ones we've always known, there is a shift in the calendar between Scorpio and Sagittarius, altering people's sign. We go, I want to read here at the bottom where we see the constellation named Ophiuchus, NASA reports, was conveniently ignored by the Babylonians when they made their zodiac calendar more than 3,000 years ago. Really? Wrong. They'd been operating on a moon-based calendar, right? That correlated perfectly with the 12 constellations of the zodiac. Wrong. But even then, some of the chosen 12 didn't fit neatly into the assigned slice. Okay, so let me show you the article that NASA wrote that many of these kind of pop astrology magazines were referring to. It was actually an article on Space Place, which is NASA's place for educating children. And so I'm going to read some of this because this is what the kids are hearing about astrology from the so-called authorities of all things space, right? Astrology is not science. And so we get this guy telling us astrology is something else. It's not science. No one has shown that astrology can be used to predict the future or describe what people are like based only on their birth date. Still, like reading fantasy stories, many people enjoy reading their astrological forecast or horoscope in the newspaper every day. Fantasy stories. And you know, NASA is certainly entitled to their opinion about astrology. But the sad thing is in this article where they're educating children about the pseudoscience, right, is they just do a bunch of terrible astronomy. So I'd like to take a quick opportunity to chew some of that up before we move on. And we'll see that this also speaks to the signs of our times. And signs and constellations are different things. What do you see here? If you could see the International Astronomical Union's boundaries of the heavens, all right, which are these blue boxes and such you see here, they were decided in 1929. You would see that for some reason, this star, Antares, the heart of the scorpion, the royal star, one of four, the 15th brightest star in our sky, sometimes the 14th, and even though it's only 4.5 degrees from the ecliptic plane in what's called southern latitude, the IAU decided it does not belong on the ecliptic and instead gave that place of the ecliptic curve, the yellow curve you see there, to Psyche, a star of Ophiuchus, much dimmer. I should say much less bright, because if you've met Antares, you know it is a party light show star in the sky. much further from the ecliptic, the star Psyche, 11.5 degrees north latitude. And for some reason, the IAU decided that this part of the ecliptic belongs not to Scorpius, not to the Scorpion, but rather to Ophiuchus. Why? So here's the dates that Cosmo reports are the dates for the new signs. And so here is the journey through Libra. And now Scorpio only gets these 8 days and 18 of Ophiuchus there before this long journey into Sagittarius. So Gemini bread is a Scorpio sun sign. Maybe Gemini moon reflecting Scorpio light is, tends towards conspiracy theory, I guess. I personally feel that there was a lot of intent in this severing of the royal star Antares from the ecliptic plane. I feel it was a time release poison that is just now catching up to astrology. And, you know, some astrologers have even gone over towards this 13th sign thing, which just shocks me, because it's coming to us from an organization, a government organization, NASA, that vehemently disqualifies astrology from the beginning without taking a look, right? Based only upon this idea that astrologers believe the signs are the constellations and therefore we're wrong. And they do a bunch of bad astronomy. Now, they didn't carve the sky into these pieces. That was the International Astronomical Union almost 100 years ago now. But for some reason, they want to go there. I'm going to show you a little bit today of sacred astronomy, of the astronomy, the very real astronomy of the tropical zodiac, actually of 3 zodiacs. So we can tune into where we are in this turning of the ages, which is dependent upon the truth that signs and constellations are different things. And this isn't only true for tropical astrologers. So let's dive in here. But I hope if you're going to work with Ophiuchus as a 13th sign, you at least know why you're doing that and not just taking a list of dates from Cosmo magazine or such. And I'm not saying Ophiuchus is not an amazing group of stars. We're going to see some of the magic and the mystery of Ophiuchus and the alignments of our day and age. Right? I'm just saying it's not of the zodiac. So let me show another thing, just to discredit NASA's bad astronomy in this article by the astronomers to debunk astrology. Okay, they say that the Babylonians invented this zodiac 3,000 years ago and talk about how it was aligned then, but it's not aligned now. Okay, well, here's a chart from 3,000 years ago about. This was a Capricorn new moon, tropical Capricorn new moon. Okay, late degrees of Capricorn, as you can see there, January 25th, 978 BC. And what's the issue? I mean, look at where the moon and the sun met in the constellations, right in the water bearer's water stream, right? So NASA's telling us that this is when things were aligned and they're not anymore. Wrong. They're going to have to go to a very different date, and I'll show you what that date is. Saturday, May 23rd, 9 p.m., Richmond, California. I gave this presentation to NORWAC Astrology Conference. And I was so excited about that date. 23 is a very magical number for me. 523, these are Fibonacci things, but also because there was this alignment of Gemini triplets, Moon, Mercury, Venus conjoining in Gemini. Well, what's the problem with that picture? So thanks to Astro Gold astrology software, and also thanks to Stellarium astronomy software, we're going to cast astrology charts and astronomy charts of the same moment. And look, we need to understand that signs and constellations are different things. Like, NASA is not wrong about this. What they're wrong about is they think that astrologers don't know, and many astrologers don't know, right? And when astrologers find out, tropical astrologers especially, it can be really difficult, right? I get so many emails. People are out there pointing their iPhone at their sky and they're, wait a second, why is this Capricorn Jupiter in the Sagittarius constellation, right? So we want to learn these things so that we can respond intelligently rather than just tucking tail and running away, fearing another burning at the stake, as it has been done not long ago, right? for those of us who are practicing this craft. And now it really seems it's scientism that's the religion that's trying to burn astrology. And yet we persist because this is the sacred science. So here we have these Gemini triplets on the chart. On the right, it's a tropical astrology chart. And yet you can see the three aligned there in the horns of the bull. So it's really helpful to have technology to address this, right? I mean, this technological thing, I mean, here we are like communicating, connecting live through the interbeams worldwide, you know, in space and time. Is that the symbol of the dawning of the age of Aquarius, these ones and O's? I mean, I hope it's not just that. Of course, the technology is a double-edged sword, right? And before we get really tech, because we will, I just want to invoke, I'm going to show a lot of information, a lot of images. I'm going to start moving even faster than we have been. But I will just ask you to release the need to understand everything. This is being recorded. You can go back and watch pieces. You can reach out to me at geminibrett.com if you want to connect and talk about any of these themes or explore them deeper. So I want to invite us to tune into the language of the night. This on May 21st, 2020 was a time lapse I took of Venus enjoying a conjunction with Mercury. And let's just let this bring us down into the sunset west together. So let's try to stay in that space as together we play in the sandboxes of information. Gemini, you know, I love this freeze frame. We get the plane flying, the car moving, you saw the wind blowing the trees, like a very Gemini experience. And yet, right, these Gemini twins meeting with the star known as Elnath, the northern horn of the bull. So why, oh why could that be Gemini? Gemini loves to ask why. You see the twins constellation up above, and notice that I call constellations by names like bull and twins, and signs by names like Taurus and Gemini, because they are different things. And this is just so crucial for us to understand. Now, the astronomers very much celebrate the star Elnath because it is so close to a very important place of the sky, where the ecliptic, the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship, crosses the galactic plane, the Milky Way. And there are two crosses like this in the sky. One is at galactic center, very close by, and one is on the opposite side of the sky here. So Elnath is a bright star that marks this galactic cross and marks what is known as galactic anticenter, or the galactic edge. Like here we are looking directly away from the center of our galaxy out into intergalactic space. On the hand of the high man, as the Celts called this place, for that is Orion's club. Orion, who is known as Kalparish in the Bengali language, time man. Orion, who is going to be the star of our mysterious exploration today. So there's that galactic cross, and what's so powerful about our day and age, and this is an alignment that only happens in this way about every 26,000 years, is the North Point. 0 degrees tropical Cancer is aligned to that galactic cross. In the midst of this asterism, the astronomers call the winter hexagon, which connects the bright stars Capella, Castor and Pollux, Procyon, the little dog, Sirius, the big dog, Regal, the foot of Orion, and Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. Now the Dakota Nakota people knew this same place as the sacred hoop of stars, though instead of Aldebaran, they used the Pleiades. So when I took that time lapse, the sun was right there with the Pleiades, which of course means we don't get to see those seven sisters, Subaru, in our sky, right? The sun has taken them under the beams and many of these stars nearby. So Sirius was setting as I was photographing Mercury and Venus, but of course I couldn't see Sirius at the time. Sun has gotten too close. And so this is what's known as the dog days of summer. Of course, that's a northern hemisphere expression for when Sirius is taken under the beams. And it tends to be that it takes the sun about 70 days to claim Sirius as an evening star and pass far enough by for Sirius to have heliacal rise, first being born again as a visible star in the sunrise east. 70 days, although I wonder if it's 72, but it said that's why that amount of time is devoted towards the process of mummification. There's a very famous mummy known as Orion. Well, Osiris. So I'll tell a tale quickly, the sad short version, which comes to us from the Greeks about the land we now call Egypt, but was known to those people as Kemet, of Asur, Set, Osiris and Isis. And Osiris was killed by his brother Set. He was cut into 14 pieces. And Isis, his bride, his consort, his queen, his sister, with another sister, Nephthys, and Anubis, and Jehuti, who we know as Thoth, went looking for these pieces. And it said everywhere they found when they consecrated one of the sacred temples of Egypt, 13 of these, because the 14th piece was not found. And that was the phallus. And Isis and Osiris did not have an heir. So Thoth created a magical golden phallus for Osiris, who in the process of mummification was given this last energy. Isis magically flew above him as a bird and became impregnated with their child, Horus, the sun, the avenger. And it said that every morning when the sun rises, Horus avenges his father's death by killing Uncle Set. But then when the sun sets at night, and this is why we call it the sun setting, Horus loses, only to win again the next morning. In this, right, the sun at the day crossing the threshold of the ascendant. You know, it said that the Egyptians didn't even have a word for death, that they called it westing, because what goes down will come up again. And Osiris, after this sacred impregnation, this virgin fertilization happened, he went through the duat, the underworld, and then became what we call today Orion in the sky. So this is the Holy Trinity of, well, maybe the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The Father, the Son, and the great Queen of Heaven, Isis. And it's known that Orion is Osiris, reincarnated in the heavens, guiding us. Now, what would be Orion's sword then is this golden phallus of Osiris, from which Horus, the sun, was born. And in that sword, in that golden phallus, exists the Orion Nebula, Messier object number 42, a very active, known birthplace of stars. And I believe this story is telling us that this is where our star Sol comes from, because it says that this is where Horus comes from. Yeah, the golden phallus of Osiris, the seed of Horus, who there was no mistaking that those in Kemet were telling us that Horus, the Avenger, was the sun in our sky. It's not just there. There's tales from all over the world and alignments from all over the world to Orion here in the States. I mean, just everywhere. Here's a story from Mesoamerica, the Maya tradition. Call these three stars I've triangulated in the lower left, Orion's feet and the easternmost belt star. They called these the hearthstones. And today, still, in any traditional Maya home, there are 3 hearthstones beneath the tortilla griddle that represent these 3 stars in the heaven, as above, so below, because those 3 stars surround what they call the smoke of creation. Now, while Osiris became Orion, as we call the constellation in our sky, Isis is Sirius, the brightest star, the goddess star that follows Orion's path, Osiris's path. Perhaps Horus then would be Aldebaran, this bright star on the other side of Orion. No, of course, Horus is our star, our sun in our sky. There's Isis there. And Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, another one of the 4 royal stars. Somehow the IAU didn't excuse it from the table as they did Antares. This, to me, is a very interesting and beautiful image. So many beautiful images from Andreas Salarius. This representation of Julius Schiller's Christian cosmos. And why I'm looking here, because I find it very fascinating that the stars that we call Orion, Schiller called Saint Joseph, right? The father, if you will, of Jesus Christ. But not the father, right? Because this was Immaculate Conception, as was the case for Horus, right? And in this trinity of Joseph and Mary and Jesus, right? Joseph is this like father, not father figure, and amazing to see him positioned as Osiris, because Osiris was the father, not father of Horus, the son, and here we have Saint Joseph. And Schiller's not really, leaving it to mystery here. This from Christopher Warner's Patriarch to Milton. Julius Schiller's monumental star atlas replaces all the traditional names of the constellations with Christian ones. The names of constellations in the northern hemisphere are inspired by New Testament and early history of the church. Aries is now Saint Peter, for example. That's interesting, yeah, because Saint Peter was the first of the disciples, and we often say that Aries is the first sign. Why? We're going to look at that today. Cassiopeia is Mary Magdalene, so Magdalene has this valued place in the heavens. But if you know the tales of Cassiopeia, you will see that is not an honoring of Mary Magdalene. The Virgin Mary is honored. She's the moon. So very importantly, the planets of the solar system also have new names. Saturn is Adam. Jupiter is Moses. The sun is Jesus Christ. The earth's moon, the Virgin Mary. Now, this idea of the sun on the cross and this indication of the turning of the ages that I'm going to show you today, it's dependent, especially when I get into the biblical prophecy of this, it's dependent on this cosmology that Christ is the sun in our sky. Christ who called himself the Son of Man. Yeah. Christ who rolled with 12 disciples. Are these the 12 signs of the zodiac? Do you know that Thomas means twins? Do you know that Didymus means twins? So Didymus Thomas literally is twins. That's the cat I call Gemini. Christ the sun and the Virgin Mary the moon. But there were 3 Marys at the crucifixion. And aren't there 3 moons? Some would say the maiden, the mother, the crone, waxing full and waning. And of course, there's a 4th phase. It's just one we don't see. Because new moon is no moon under the beams. New moon is no moon unless we have an occultation, unless there's some shadow play, right? And such an alignment is coming our way very soon. This alignment that I feel is the most powerful astronomical alignment of our age. The sun on the cross. Hand of the mighty one eclipse. What do I mean by that? Of course, Orion's hand, and we'll see that more. Here's the chart, June Solstice 2020. Very soon after the solstice moment, this is the Tropical Zodiac, so we see the moon meeting the sun in the first minutes of tropical Cancer, the north point. And of course, this close to a lunar node, this means shadow, this means eclipse. Amazingly, that's not a total solar eclipse, it's an annular or ring of fire solar eclipse. I say amazingly because they're so close to the nodes. The dragon's head, the dragon's tail, and we see their shapes in the slithering of the snake, and so much snake and dragon symbolism with the lunar nodes. Why? the caduceus staffs of Hermes. Have a look at the lower right of the screen, and we'll bring the moon in here. And this is like a new moon, and yet like a no moon, because from the northern hemisphere's point of view, moon is above the sun, so no shadow for you, no evidence of that moon. And from the southern hemisphere's point of view, moon is below the sun. Just turn your head upside down. Well, every month the moon snakes below and above the ecliptic plane, the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship. So here we have another new moon, absolutely no shadow for you, because that one seems to be square the nodes at the northern bending, right, as far from an eclipse as possible. Bring your attention now to the image on the lower left. This is another one of caduceus staffs, the snaking of the sun about the earth plane. And this is a story of declination. This is where we're going to get a little nerdy, okay? So again, don't feel like you need to grab it all. This is being recorded. Here we are looking at a declination of like 1 degree north, because I'm just a tiny bit after the equinox, right? You can see the longitude here is 2 degrees and 36 minutes Aries. So declination is the measurement, the angular measurement north or south of the celestial equator. What is the celestial equator? It is the plane of Earth's rotation. And the very real astronomy of the tropical zodiac, the simple, the elegant astronomy, the astronomers are ignoring when they attack tropical astrology, is that it is simply an interface between the planes of day, celestial equator, the plane of our rotation, and the plane of year, the ecliptic plane, where the sun always lives, because the ecliptic is the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship, the orbital path of Earth about sun, and therefore from our point of view, the yearly path of sun about Earth through the constellations and the signs, they're different things, of the zodiac. At equinox time, the sun has a declination of 0 because it's on the cross. Let's move forward from there, and you can see the snaking graph at the bottom as sun moves through tropical Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. It's in northern declinations. It's north of the celestial equator, and it's getting to its northern extreme, which is this time, June solstice, the sun at 0 degrees, tropical Cancer, the north point. Why can I say that? It's easier to see that this way. This is how we're used to looking at globes, right? The tilt angle. Well, that tilt, the spine of Gaia, Earth's north pole, is leaning in every moment forever towards 0 degrees tropical Cancer. That's why I can call this the north point. Earth's pole, which defines the direction, in every moment forever is leaning north towards 0 degrees tropical Cancer. Okay? So when the sun ingresses tropical Cancer, it is shining directly above a location on the Earth at a place called the Tropic of Cancer. And it's maybe easier to see here. The ecliptic plane in every moment passes through Earth's tropics, which are named for the same thing that the tropical zodiac is, tropicos, which is Greek for turn around. So 0 Cancer is the north point. The directions are defined by Earth's axis of rotation, which I like to call Gaia's spine. And I like to call the celestial equator simply Earth's equator projected into the heavens, the plane of our rotational motion, our daily motion, our primary motion. I like to call that the circle of matter. Because though the spinning of Earth brings us such hits as sunrise and sunset, it's really completely an earthly motion, and earthly the cross of matter, okay? Once we have north and south, we can define west and east. Earth spins from the west to the east, which is why the sun rises in Africa before it does in South America, for example. Now, an older term, and one that I'm fond of using for that pole, is the world tree. And I would say that this is the tree that the 2 birds are hanging out on, but only one is tied to it because one depends upon its sweet fruits. And I'm referring to that Rig Veda passage I read at the beginning of this presentation. And that is the tropical zodiac. The tropical zodiac is a directional function, a directional mechanism. It is tied to this world tree. That is not free. That is not true of the sidereal zodiac, which is free to fly, the bird that is free to fly. So in our day and age, we have a North Star. We have a star on top of the tree at the celestial North Pole. It's called Polaris, North Star. It has not held those names for long. It will not hold those names for too long because it will not always be our North Star. And there's many ornaments on this tree. This one, the Cancer cusp, I can call the North sign. Now the truth is, the sun shines when it ingresses tropical Cancer. It shines on a location on Earth at the Tropic of Cancer, right? But I can call it the North sign because in every moment forever, Earth's northern axis, the axis of our daily motion, is leaning towards 0 Cancer, just as the southern axis is leaning towards 0 Capricorn. So North Point and South Point. And once I know North and South, I can fill in East, Aries, and West, Libra. And I'm talking tropical zodiac. I'm talking about the cardinal points of the tropical zodiac, which are named for the cardinal directions. Like so many ancient shamanic systems, the tropical zodiac is a system based upon the energies of the cardinal directions. We know the seasons are also based upon the tropicals and based upon the directions. And we tropical astrologers, if we want to say it's seasonal, of course we face the issue of seasonal opposition between the northern and southern hemispheres. Well, my friends, north is north everywhere on Earth. The tropical zodiac is directional. So we tune back in here with the sun at the north point, June solstice. And now northern signs, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, but northern signs decreasing in northern declination because when the sun ingresses Libra, it has 0 declination. It's at the cross, the year cross, one of 2 crosses of the plane of day, equator, and the plane of year, ecliptic. And that point 0 Libra, it's due west of the center of Earth, the heart of Gaia, the place where we are all connected. Now, that doesn't mean it's west from New York and Melbourne at the same time. That's impossible. But I'm talking about that place where we measure the planet's placement in the signs from, not the surface where we live, breathe, and can witness these heavenly happenings. We measure the placement of planets in the signs from Earth's center, from Gaia's heart, the place where we are all connected. And because the northern axis leans towards Cancer, the southern towards Capricorn, that means Libra is due west of Earth's center. And this, my friends, is why the Libra glyph looks like a setting sun. The sun now journeys into southern hemisphere overhead zenith experiences because Libra and Scorpio and Sagittarius are southern signs, taking us to the south point, 0 degrees Capricorn, where Gaia's spine always leans from the southern side. And when the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, where does it shine? Somewhere on Earth, on the Tropic of Capricorn. So, you know, the astronomers want me to say that that place, Capricorn, is Sagittarius because when the sun is at December solstice, it's aligned to the star group they call Sagittarius, that I will call Archer. Well, why don't they call this place on Earth the Tropic of Sagittarius? So one of the reasons why astrologers should integrate the astrology, the astronomy of astrology, is because the astronomers are forgetting it. They're forgetting very important, grounded, elegant Earth astrology. I could go on, but I think we've had enough of this. So let's continue our journey, maybe get a little bit more mystical now. This is a Northern Hemispherian trip, but the truth is, friends, and I'll show it to you another time, Earth, because the sun is moving north through space. So in that sense, we can say that northward is the future like evolutionary astrologers work with the North Lunar Node. And we can say in that sense that even though for the Southern Hemisphere, this is the sun starting to get lower in the sky, we can say in agreement with the Northern Hemisphere experience that this is now the Capricorn goat who climbs the mountain. So Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, southern signs, but coming back north to the cross. Equinox, the sun on the cross, the year cross. Oh, whoops. Christ on the cross, the Son of Man on the cross. And do you know that Christ was crucified at Passover time? Do you see how the sun is passing over the celestial equator? This, of course, now celebrated as Easter. Let me show you something about the East. If you sit and watch East, you will find, if you spend some time, that stars that rise south of East go to the south and north of East go to the north. And every day and always, the eastern sky, new beginnings, is like a fountain of youth. And those stars will curl back around to set in the west. It is the horns of the ram. So Passover, if you know the tale, right? This is Moses, Pharaoh, let my people go. And there were many plagues that were brought to Pharaoh and the Egyptians, who the Bible says enslaved the Jewish people. I mean, the frogs rained from the sky, the rivers turned to blood. And the heaviest of these was the last, which was the firstborn child of every household was killed in the midst of night. But that angel of death passed over the doors where ram's blood was painted above. Why ram's blood? Because Easter. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Because equinox. So the Passover, it's part of the Jewish solely lunar calendar. It's not always going to be exactly equinox. It's going to be nearby, but I will say that it is equinox time and Aries equinox time, the point that is due east of the center of Earth, and east is new beginnings, when the sun is on the yearly cross, passing over the plane of day. Due east of the center of Earth, Easter. Right? I mean, and the bunnies in this image will show us about some of the ancient roots here of this tradition, a very northern hemispheric thing, because this is the time of fertility. And so bunnies don't lay eggs, you know. But what do they have to do with one another? Well, it goes back. Some will say to Ishtar, definitely to Oester, who is the goddess of the dawn. Where does dawn happen? In the east. Her name means east, as does very clearly Easter. So the sun is on the year cross when it is Easter time, Passover time, because the sun is passing over the celestial equator, where it always lives on the ecliptic, this cross due east of the center of Earth, the place of new beginnings. This is very fundamental to the turning of the ages doctrine. And this, my friends, is why we can say that an Aries ingress, when the sun at March equinox ingresses tropical Aries, that this is the beginning of the year, because east is the place of new beginnings, and this is the sun due east of the center of the earth, where we are all connected. So it is often taught that this is the beginning of the year because this is the time that light overcomes night, spring equinox. Well, that's a northern hemispheric trip, isn't it? Let's act locally, but think globally. Why is this the beginning of the year? Because that place is east. And that is why we can also call this the natural zodiac. Look, the tropical signs literally are Earth's houses. And the ascendant degree for the whole world is 0 degrees tropical Aries. Why? Because it is the east point. It is the global ascendant. So this brings us into the turning of the ages doctrine. Where does that east point align? Now, this is a lot to look at. And it's beautiful to look at, thanks to my beautiful partner, Anna, who helps me create illustrations that then I can break apart and animate and do these things to try to show dynamic motion. let's break this down. 3 popular zodiacal philosophies. This is the astronomer's zodiac. This is the one that NASA is arguing that astrologers are too stupid to understand. Wrong. The constellations that embrace the ecliptic plane, the 12, vary significantly in size. So the priestess, for example, describes about 46 degrees of ecliptic arc, while only about 15 degrees for the mighty ram. So it is absolutely true that no equal sign zodiac could possibly be constellational. This is not only something that tropical astrologers need to understand, but also sidereal astrologers. Here's the sidereal zodiac shown with the purple written worded signs on the outer ring and the purple divisions of equal slices. So sidereal Sagittarius, 30 degrees, 1/12 of the 360-degree ecliptic circle. Same size as Scorpio, even though you can see some scales sneaking into that sign. Same size as Libra, right? Where you see Zubin el-Janubi and Zubin el-Shamali, the stars with the coolest names ever, scale stars, but you see a whole lot of priestess up in sidereal Libra. And this does not change with precession. So sidereal astrologers will sometimes attack tropical astrologers for being whack because the signs and constellations don't align. Well, neither do the sidereal signs because the constellations are significantly different in size. In fact, most popular sidereal zodiacs are configured in such a way that 0 degrees sidereal Libra is calibrated to Spica, the shaft of wheat that the priestess holds. Well, what's the issue? That's the alpha star, I'll say it this way, of the Virgo constellation. So not only do the sidereal signs not align with the constellations, so they can't because the constellations vary in size, but sidereal Libra begins with the brightest star of Virgo. And you know I preferred to call that priestess, okay? So know that. That's an important thing to know. I mean, it's important to know that for tropical, it's even more challenging, right? This is our day and age. Tropical Libra features Spica at 24 degrees. So the bright star of the Virgo constellation, which I call priestess, 24 Libra. Here's Scorpio. It's all scales. Right, and I should say it's the glyphs on the inside. First of all, the glyphs are transmissions of tropical astronomy. Show that to you another time. Well, Sagittarius, for example, all that is Earth's tilted axis and plane, right? The plane of the day tilted in respect to the plane of the year, which is the simple and elegant astronomy of the tropical zodiac. And it's right there in our glyph. And there's some more magic about that arrow too, as we shall see. That arrow of Sagittarius aligned with the scorpion of the sky. So this is definitely an issue. If you believe that these energies are coming to you from the stars out there, or the constellations, if you believe the constellations are the signs, you, my friend, are a constellational astrologer, and you better realign your zodiac. The tropical zodiac is not about any star other than our own. And that does not in any way, I'm not in any way trying to imply that the stars, the so-called fixed stars and the constellations are not contributing powerfully to our energetic experience as earthlings. Absolutely they are. I work with constellations and with stars more than most astrologers, I believe. What I'm saying is that the tropical signs are defined by the relationship of Earth and Sun, the relationship of Earth's day and Earth's year, and that's it. And I will tell you that every planet has its own tropical zodiac based upon the interface of the planes of its spin and its revolution, its orbit. And that's it. And this thing changes over time. The sidereal will stay aligned to the constellations always. It's configured to a star. But the tropical will change. So there will be a day, this is the dawning of the age of Capricorn, many, many, many years from now, when tropical Sagittarius will be sidereal Libra and constellational Virgo feet. It's a confusing thing, but it's very good to get to know the truth that there are at least 3 zodiacal philosophies, and that the sidereal zodiac begins with that star Spica, most of them. But the truth is that as a philosophy, we could begin anywhere. And I'm going to look at a different place maybe to begin today. Now, this is a lot to see. Anna was not happy with me when we were designing this one because she always begs for us to lean towards simplicity. But I needed to show the 3 motions, okay? Celestial equator, this is the plane of the primary motion, that's Earth's daily spin. And you see here we're orienting to the ecliptic, the plane of the secondary motion, Earth's orbit, and therefore the orbit of Sun about Earth from our point of view. And of course the ecliptic, if we extend that towards infinity, we encounter the constellations of the zodiac. So from our point of view, the Sun is always held by one of those star groups. Good luck seeing it. The Sun is pretty bright, you know. And the planets, for the most part, dance at that ecliptic plane. The solar system relatively flat, right? So the plane of day, the plane of year. But to speak about the turning of the ages, we have to tune into Earth's 3rd motion, which is known as axial precession. And it looks a little something like this. This is a long sweep, about 26,000 years. That's a good rough number to know. There's some disagreement about the rate and the period, but it's always about 26,000 years. Now, north, like on your street, will always be north unless the comet comes again. The shortest shadow of every day will point either north or south, depending on where you live. And that's always going to point to the same place across the way from where you are looking, okay? But it's not always going to point to the same star. Because while Gaia's spine defines the directions, right? So the directions on Earth are the same. And I'm not talking about magnetic and north, right? I'm talking about true north and true south, Gaia's spine. Well, Gaia's spine changes where she points in the sky over this long period of time, about 26,000 years. So in our day and age, we have this North Star where the northern axis is pointing, Polaris, but that will change. In about 13,000 years on the other half of the cycle, and about 13,000 years ago, the so-called Golden Age, Vega was our North Star. Polaris more aligned in that one. Okay, well, as north moves, right? This is a precessional motion, which is a backwards motion. Why? Because Earth spins west to east, or Earth orbits west to east, but this precessional motion is east to west. And so what happens is the cardinal points, right, and the cardinal signs will slip backwards through the sidereal signs and the constellations. So this is the alignments of our day and age. The North Point is now aligned to sidereal Gemini. And that will very slowly move back into sidereal Taurus someday. It will be in about 6 degrees of precession, or 432 years. And of course, the East Point, and our attention is there. Why? Because East is the place of new beginnings. It is the global ascendant. The big question is, where will that point, which is currently aligned to sidereal Pisces, when will it precess? To sidereal Aquarius? Or is it the constellation of Aquarius? When is this dawning of the age of Aquarius? Because sign me up for some harmony and understanding, you know? Is it when the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars? Well, the moon is always in the 7th house somewhere. Here we go. 2020 Aries equinox. Mars and Jupiter are aligned. I love this about this equinox because I am a sky guy. Every planet was far enough from the sun to be visible in that moment from somewhere on Earth. And the truth is that the dawning of the age of Aquarius wrap, it is usually taught as a thing of visibility, right? What are you taught? Where are we? Well, simply do this. Just go outside on March equinox and just look at what constellation the sun is aligned to. You hear that all the time. It's about the March equinox sun, except they'll say the spring equinox sun, and where it is in the stars. Okay. I mean, I'm sorry to say it this way, but that is such a sad sign of how disconnected modern astrology has gotten from an actual experience of the heavens. Have you ever gone outside and seen what stars the sun is aligned to? If we could, and stellarium astronomy software helps a lot, right? And so we are in this age where we can play with technology, and maybe that's the sign. But if we were able to see through the atmosphere, we would find that the sun, if it didn't just burn our eyeballs, is still aligned to the constellation of the fishes, and will be for some time. So no Aquarius age for you, sorry. But don't worry, there's more. First of all, the 12th house is hidden things. Mountains, trees, right? But maybe even more importantly, what happens when the sun rises into the 12th house? Why is it the 12th? Well, the first house stars will be the first to rise after the birth moment. The 12th house stars have to reach and rest and root before they can rise again. In other words, you are your ascendant. And so we should certainly speak about the global ascendant. When the sun rises, it illuminates the earth and it hides the sky. It is the only one of these visible planetas, these visible wanderers, who you can never see with your eyes which stars it's aligned to. Now, I could show you how to do this with the sundial, with a horizon calendar, how to do this with the meridian calendar, how to work with the phases of the moon, and much more. Or there's one kind of simple thing. Simply, I'm rewinding time here, right? When the sun is still below ground, the stars are out. So the sun will basically be in the constellation that follows the last constellation you can see before the dawn light eats the sky. So let's see here on March equinox 2020 what that was. I'm looking from Giza. And Stellarium software does a wonderful job of representing this from what I found by exploring, in person and comparing it, of showing you like the sun's coming up and these stars go away. You can change your pollution settings, which is a sad thing to say. So what do you see? There it is. Psych. That's the trickster. That's Mercury. So that's not telling us which constellation was last visible. This star. What star is that? That's one of the lucky stars, Sado Malik, of the water bearer. So it is definitely true that the last zodiacal stars that we see before March equinox sunrise in our day and age are stars of the water bearer. Is that the dawning of the age of Aquarius? Is that the criterion? It doesn't really seem precise enough. We want to stay curvy in the way we astrologize and keep it in the heart and the art of the chart. But look, ours is also a sacred science and a linear craft in that regard. Now, it won't be, let's see, actually, let's do this first. Because here we are around this time. This is June 21st, 2020. Okay, so the June solstice. The point I want to show here is this. 0 Aries, because it's due east of the center of Earth, rises due east every day forever. Always. That's the point of it. It is the east point. So if you create a sundial, work with the shortest shadow of the day to find the directions, create a medicine wheel, know where east is, and set yourself up in a place where you can actually see the eastern horizon, which is rare. Look at the point of the ecliptic. If you learn to see the ecliptic in the sky, which rises due east, and that will tell you where the global ascendant is aligned in our time. And the time to look at that is certainly not at March equinox, because the sun is there, and it will blind you, friends, or at least burn you, and you'll have no idea what stars it's aligned to. Look at this time. Look in Gemini sun, Cancer sun time. Why? Because the east point rises in the middle of the night. I cast this from Monterrey, Mexico, just because it is at June solstice this year when the sun is down at the IC in that place, which I found on an astro map. And what do we find if we use the software to look through the ground, but that moon occulting the solar disk on the hand of the high man in this sacred hoop? Let's get back to that. For now, let's move forward. So here we are. We'll just ask the software to show us March 20th, 2020. Going to move forward a long way here. This is March 20th. This is March equinox. Sun's Aries ingress in the year 3300. It's going to be that long before the March equinox sun and the Aries point, the east point, the global ascendant point aligns there to the prominent kind of water stream from the water bearer. So don't hold your breath. Now, it'll align to a star in like 3000. And actually, if you want to do the IAU boundaries, the east point will align to IAU, International Astronomical Union Aquarius, in about 2600. So coming soon to a theater called you, not soon enough. And I've already talked about the IAU boundaries and why I'm not a fan. Sorry, Ophiuchus. Anyway, from here on out, we'll probably play with this device to turn the tropical zodiac. Actually, let's keep the tropical zodiac fixed to the directions, right? To the meridian, north-south, to the spine of Gaia. You'll see that the North Pole and always is leaning towards the cusp of tropical Gemini and Cancer, that 0 Aries is the east point, that the Sagittarius Capricorn cusp is the south point, that the Virgo Libra cusp is the west point. Always, forever, the tropical zodiac is a directional function. So let's keep that fixed, and we'll let the constellations and the sidereal zodiacs, which are always tied in the same way. That is the bird that maybe eats from the space tree, but isn't tied to the world tree like the tropical zodiac is. Do you see? So we'll let that swim around as we move through time. So let's start now. 2020 AD. I know it's become hip or like more PC to say CE, Common Era, but yo, this thing is a Christian calendar, right? I mean, unless you want to redefine time, and I don't think we shouldn't, you know, let's call it like it is, friends. Anyway, that's where I'm coming from. You'll see me play with it in a bit. But so here we are, 2020 AD. And that's where the east point is now aligned, right, in this diagram, to the head of the fish as we saw, and to about 24 degrees sidereal Pisces. And when I say sidereal, I'm going to work with the Lahiri zodiac. So as I mentioned, I gave this talk at NORWAC Astrology Conference, and that was May 23rd, 2020 at 2:30 p.m. You think a guy that calls himself Gemini Brett was stoked to see Gemini Mercury exact the midheaven or what? Seattle, Washington. Sadly, I couldn't be there, right? Because we're in this strange lockdown time. Is this part of the prophecy? That seems odd. I was at home right here in Richmond, California. We'll dig the midheaven. Here, Mercury was exact the midheaven, the arc minute. Wait a second. How can the midheaven in Bay Area, California, and Seattle, Washington, 1,000 miles away, like how can the midheaven be the same? Well, what is the midheaven? It is your local meridian. It is your local north-south. It is your local reflection of Gaia's spine. And Seattle is due north of Richmond, California. So you'll see it different and slightly at this time. It varies much more when we're away from the equinox points, which are the only points that rise due east and set due west, right? The midheaven for where I sit now, I mean, I'm almost exactly due south of my old house from Seattle, will always be the same in every moment forever. And here the ascendant was close too. Anyway, what I want to look at is a tropical zodiac, which is here in the lower left for Richmond, and a Lahiri sidereal zodiac for the same moment, to tune into what's called the I am Nasa, right? The difference between the two. And most of you, I believe, know that in our day and age, the sidereal zodiac, the zodiac of the stars, and the tropical zodiac, which I hope now I've shown you is the zodiac of the earth, the zodiac of the below, while the sidereal is the zodiac of the above. I'll say it that way. They're off by about 24 degrees. Look at the north node and the sidereal, 5 degrees Gemini. Interestingly, that's the exaltation of the north node. Add 24 and you get to 29. 24 degrees in 8 minutes, right? At this time that separate the sidereal from the tropical. So we can use that and the rate of precession to dig into when this dawning of the age will be, maybe. Now the ancient canonical rate of precession is 72 years. Okay, Set, as I mentioned before, killed Osiris. He brought 72 henchmen to do so. Christ had 72 disciples. That is Confucius. There are 72 names of God employed by Moses to part the seas. You 72 steps on the ladder to heaven. I mean, we could go on and on and on, 72 everywhere in the mysteries. Why? Because it is the rate of precession. It takes 72 Earth years for the tropical zodiac, which is directional, to precess through the heavenly realms. Okay. So 72 years for 1 degree. In other words, it's hard to notice this in the span of a human lifetime. Coronarium Nasa is 24 degrees in 8 minutes, which is that decimal. So we do a little math and we find out this means that for 24 degrees of, or 6 degrees of precession, right? 6 times 72 years, it's going to be like 2442. Now the astronomers' rate of precession that they say today is 71.59 years. Either way, we're looking at like 2440 for when the east point precesses to the cusp of sidereal Aquarius and Pisces. And if we're talking about an interface of these two 12 teeth gears, the tropical zodiac and the sidereal zodiac, equal 12 divisions of ecliptic, one based on the directions of Earth, one based on the heavenly stars. If we're looking at their interface, we're looking at around 2440. So again, really don't hold your breath, right? But we're going to see another possibility. Now to get back into astrological ages by the numbers, and I'm going to use the canonical number of 72 years, then we find that the entire great year or Platonic year, the precessional year, is about 25,920 years long. Now there's all sorts of number magic stuff here. I'm trying not to share it all because there's a limited amount of time and there's a lot to get to still. So this is simply 360 degrees of the zodiac times 72 years per degree. We could do 30 degrees times 72 years per degree, or divide that other thing by 30, and we get the age of an astrological month, a great month. That's an astrological age by the numbers. So if it's equal, if it's not about the constellations, which are not equal, if it's about the interface of the tropical signs, the directions with the sidereal signs, then each age is about 2160 years long. Now, interestingly, that's the diameter of the moon in miles. I'll leave that there for today. So what if we go back sometime? It's 1850 BC. And you can see the east point then aligned to the bull. But this is the very young bull, right? Because we are precessing. So we're going to go from the aged bull and back into the calf territory, right? So this is about the time of the beginning of the age of the ram, or we could say the age of Aries. East point precessing into sidereal Aries, the sidereal Aries Taurus cusp. This is Passover, right? This is let my people go, the blood of the ram, the shepherd king. You know, and shortly after that time, Moses' staff turned into a serpent. That seems kind of Asclepian or maybe Caducean, Mercurian. Anyway, Exodus, right? It didn't look this joyous, right? I mean, it was torment in the desert, according to the book, starvation, plagues. And there was a time when Moses found his way to the peak of Mount Sinai and received the 10 Commandments, which shattered on the way down, interestingly, but I think he remembered them. One of them said, "Thou shalt not kill." And he disobeyed that commandment because one before it said, no false idols before me, the one and only God, right? And so Moses and his brother Aaron killed 3,000 of their people because they were worshiping the golden bull. Why? I mean, they grew up in Egypt, and this is what you do when you're starving, right? And there's plagues to survive, right? They were giving offerings to the golden bull. Actually, it was the golden calf. And that is so important because the ages move retrograde through the degrees of the zodiac, right? So the age is going to change to Aries from the first minutes of Taurus, the calf, not the bull. Yeah. So this is a transmission of the shifting of the ages from the bull age to the calf to the shepherd kings. Like there's so many, like Theseus killing the Minotaur, the Gugalana, the bull of heaven, Erishkigal's husband dying in the Inanna story, right? Bull, death, the end of the age of Taurus. But I guess that's enough because we have a lot to do. So let's move about 2,160 years later. Actually, let's stop here. Why? 1 BC. And why would I call that this time, which we're told is the birth of the Lamb of God, right? See the young sheep? After these years of the shepherd king, the lamb is born to the virgin, which I like to call this 1 BP. Why? Before Pisces. Look at the east point. It's completely configured to the first stars of the Fishes constellation. Is this why the calendar that we're using, most of us in modern times, is configured this way? I say yes. And so the one born, the lamb, became the fisher of men. Right? The miracle of the fishes and the loaves, Pisces and Virgo. Right? The fisher king born of the virgin. I know you've heard this before. The one that walked on water, like literally becoming a fish. The one that taught his disciples to be fisher of men. The avatar of the Piscean age. The one who died on the cross. So what is this thing about the sun on the cross? Passover time, now celebrated as Easter. Is it simply the sun on the cross of the year, east of the center of the earth, crossing over the celestial equator? Is it the daily crossings of sunrise and sunset? No, there's more to this. There's another cross we'll bring our attention to. A little astrological aside quickly, this is a really beautiful thing to know. The sun on the cross and the 33rd degree. Interesting. So wait, why 33 years old? Christ was died then. There's a lot of theories about the 33, the vertebrae. We could go on and on. Well, let me show you something astrological, okay? The year is not 365 and a quarter days long as the Julian calendar believed it to be. And you know this is true. If it was, every fourth solar return cast for our natal location would show the same angles because it would be the same time of day that we were born every fourth year, but it's not 365 and a quarter. It's like that. And that's not even the full, fraction, but 365.242199 is the date, the numbers that I use in most of my calculations. The Gregorian calendar deals with this in an interesting way. I'm not going to deal with that today. What I am going to say is this: check out your solar return, cast for your nativity, cast for your birthplace when you turn 33. It will be more aligned for some than others because signs have different rates of ascension, and it depends where you're looking from and what sign was rising when you were born and much more. But you will find, most of you, that at your 33rd solar return, you have what I call an earth return. Because what is earth? The cross of matter inside the circle of spirit, which is the ecliptic. The cross of matter is your angles, right? Where the horizon and the meridian intersect the ecliptic, the cross you are nailed to here on earth. And every 33 years, especially at 33, you get this earth return where your solar return cast for your nativity will feature the same angles as those of your birth. Why? Because 33 times that fraction of a day there is every year left over above the 365 equals nearly a whole number. So let me just show you one example. We'll ask Chris Farley to offer this, and I only show the points involved here. So Chris Farley's solar return, 33rd. Sadly, Chris Farley died that year. And you can see that at the solar return time cast for his birthplace, it's almost the same time of day. He's born at 3:34 p.m. Here we have about 3:27 p.m., right? And therefore, the same degrees of the zodiac are rising, reaching, resting, and rooting, right? So thank you, Chris Farley. Back to Christ. All right. So 33 AD, crucifixion, and here's the supper that would turn out to be the Last Supper, right? And astrologers will often refer to some texts from the disciples about this supper and transmissions from Christ about the dawning of the new age. This, of course, was Passover Supper. And Christ spoke to the disciples when they asked where to prepare the Passover. And we find it in 2 of the Gospels. And here's from Mark, where he says, he sendeth forth 2 of his disciples and saith unto them, go ye into the city, and there shall meet you a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him. Right? And in the other, it's follow him into the house in which he dwells and go upstairs, right? You'll see that large upper room furnished and prepared. There, make ready for us. Anyway, and I love actually here, and in the evening he cometh with the 12, right? Not the 13, NASA. All right, so go ye into the city, and there shall meet you a man bearing a pitcher of water, right? So speaking, it would seem, about the age of the water bearer, about the coming of the age of Aquarius. But when? And I'll tell you, it's on like the next pages. So let me get to that. First, is this the spawning of the age of Aquarius? Why do I say spawning? Little fish, right? I mean, is this the tadpole of Aquarius? We need to get back to the very young fish before we can make the shift. And so this is a little ridiculous, but I'm calling forth the SS Minnow and dating myself, Gilligan's Island, which I watched a lot when I was a kid. Interestingly, in the Christmas episode, which was episode 12 of Gilligan Island, which was called Birds Gotta Fly and Fish Gotta Talk, Pisces becoming Aquarius, you've got, the minnow like trying to contact and get freed through this technology of the radio. Anyway, sorry, that might be a little ridiculous, but here's a question: how can we become young fish to make this great shift? So from 1 BP, do we simply add 2160 years from there? I mean, that would take us to 2160. Still a ways from now. But that wasn't the meshing of the gears anyway. The sidereal and the tropical zodiac were one and the same if you use the Lahiri correlation in the year 285 AD. How do I know? Well, I went to Stellarium and I looked for when Spica, which is where 0 degrees sidereal Libra is configured to, the alpha star of the Virgo constellation. I just found out when it was 180 degrees longitude, which, by the way, equals tropical 0 Libra. So when did sidereal Libra equal tropical Libra? In 285, and I got a date, and I cast a couple astro gold charts, and here you go. The zodiacs are the one and the same. And there's some weird things where like arc minutes are off in ways that actually seem impossible, but regardless, you can see here it was that time. Depending on your correlations and the numbers you're using for precession, but it was about May 26th, the year 285, when the tropical and sidereal zodiac were aligned. So NASA's talking about 3,000 fucking years ago. Like, really? Really, NASA? Like, how about learn some astronomy? And then let's talk. But look, astrologers are often teaching that it was 0, right? It was the shift from BC to AD. No, 285. Cast some charts, check it out. Now there's different correlations. There's different IM NASAs. We can go on and on. But here in the Lahiri and tropical zodiacs, 285. There's a lot happening then, especially in the movement into Christianity, right? So we're going to leave that alone because we don't have much time left, and we need a lot of time to talk about sacred time. So from 285 AD, maybe we just add that 2160 years of an astrological age, right? And that will bring us very close to that other number we got to, and it should, because it's a mathematical happening, 2440. Is that the dawning of the age of, do we have to wait that long for harmony, understanding, and crystal mystic revelations and what this song promised me? Damn. I do think this is elegant, right? That is when tropical Aries from 0 to 30 degrees equals sidereal Pisces, right? We're 6 degrees off right now. That's when it's aligned. And that feels to me like a different thing. I should take that date away because here we're back 2160 years. When Aries was Aries, or when Aries was Taurus, right? I mean, it feels to me like this meshing of these two gears that each have 12 teeth, that is the shift. But I don't want to wait till 2440. And it certainly seems that what's in the air now is this shifting of the ages. Certainly don't want to wait till 3300. 3,000, 2,600, whatever. Okay. So don't worry. Let's go to the great Dane Rudhyar and the transition to the new age from astrological timing. Rudhyar speaks about the precession of the royal stars. He says, today Aldebaran is located in the zodiacal sign Gemini, about 9 degrees. Tropical Gemini. Antares, 9 Sag. Famolo, 3 Pisces. Regulus, at the very end of Leo, entering what I call the Sphinx degrees. Why? Because Leo 30th degree and Virgo 1st degree, because the Sphinx, being half lion and half virgin, obviously represents symbolically the transition between Leo and Virgo. And know that Sphinx is staring due east, right? He says Regulus was entering the sign Leo in 137 BC and had a longitude, of course, of 120 degrees at that time. And this may be another way of defining the beginning of the so-called Piscean age, right? Looking at that so-called royal star that rules them all to define the shift of the ages. So this is releasing the idea that sidereal is Spica and now going to Regulus, okay? And that it's going to shift in 2010 AD. Now, Stellarium software suggests a different date. We're looking at Regulus processing the stars through the signs, 150 degrees celestial longitude on August 13th, 2012. That's the 0 Libra point here, 150. That's the 0 Virgo point. So Regulus precessed from tropical Leo to tropical Virgo on August 13th, 2012, according to Stellarium software. That's an amazing thing to me because August 13th and 2012, do you know your sacred time? Do you know your Mayan calendrics? Well, if you do, you know that's not a Mayan calendar. That's the Mexica sun zone. Gotcha. Anyway, the sun zone does also speak about the turning of the ages, the movement into a time of a new sun, right? As does the 2012 long count calendar. There's not many of these, right? This is in Villahermosa, Mexico. This missing chunk is at the Met in New York. And it spoke of a time of 13 Baktuns, which fascinatingly run from August 13th, 314 BC, to December 21st, 2012. So there, August 13th, 2012, it ties these two together. I'm just like tripping on that. And this was a time that Rudhyar was looking to. And it would seem that the Maya long count calendar of 13 Baktuns was looking forward to this powerful astronomical alignment of the sun on the cross. So here we get to the point of this talk. The book, Galactic Alignment, by the great John Major Jenkins, now sadly recently passed. Like, blessings to him. What an amazing adventurer and truth speaker and writer and mystery keeper and sharer. Thank you, John. Read this. Galactic Alignment by John Major Jenkins. He'll tune you into prophecies from many traditions about our time, your time right now. So why 2020? I mean, the east points in the head of the fish. There's no dawning of the age of Aquarius. But is that the only place we should look? What about to the poles, where the directions are defined by Gaia's spine? The tropical zodiac is the zodiac of Earth's axis, friends. That is the tree, okay? Where is it pointing in our day and age? Well, the southern axis is now leaning to a very mystical place of space. And we'll ask Mercury to show us a third caduceus staff. Another snaking. We saw the moon snaking about the sun plane, the nodes. We saw the earth snaking about, the sun snaking about the earth plane, the tropical zodiac. And by the way, 0 Aries, let's look here. 0 degrees Aries is Earth's north node. See how that correlation works? All right, here's a third serpent. The solar system, of course, led by our star, snakes above and below the galactic plane. Some thought that that's what the 2012 thing was about. Astronomically, it's not. What it was about is this. What do you see here? Have you seen this? The Ouroboros, the snake that bites its own tail, is the cosmic serpent, is the Milky Way in your sky. Now, most of us live under bright city lights, and this area of the sky looks something more like that. But if you know how to connect the dots, you know how to find the galactic center. Because this place that the astronomers call Sagittarius A star, the supermassive black hole that they say at the center of our galaxy, this close to the ecliptic plane, is right between the 2 constellations traditionally associated with the 2 astrology signs that have arrows in the glyphs we currently use to represent them. They are the arrow of the Sagittarius and the arrow of Scorpio. And if we align these to the constellations, as it once was, not 3,000 years ago, NASA, but if we do, then the arrow of the archer in the sky and the stinger of the scorpion and the foot of Ophiuchus. So it's a very important mystical constellation, just not zodiacal. They triangulate, they all point to and step upon the galactic center. Do you think the ancients knew this? Yes. So Sagittarius A star, you probably know, or we'll say galactic center, is where in the zodiac? Right? This is a radio telescope measured phenomenon which projects to the zodiac. This is what we do with fixed stars, right? We tie everything to the ecliptic plane through perpendicular projection, and it's 27 degrees tropical Sagittarius in our day and age. So another 3 degrees of precession will be necessary before the solstice sun is there. But it's not on the ecliptic. We don't see it with our eyes. What we see if we get to dark skies is this cosmic serpent, which bites its own tail at the galactic cross, where the ecliptic and the galactic equator, the Milky Way, cross. And in our day and age, this is where Earth's southern spine is leaning. Once in 26,000 years like this, friend. Now, in the northern hemisphere, this is the birth of the sun after the longest night. And this is a place in the sky that the Maya called Xibalba Bay, the underworld from which the hero twins will rebirth the sun. So here's a 2012 alignment, but it wasn't just that year, it's now. 2220 is when precession has carried us far enough that that 0 Capricorn point, and therefore the December solstice sun, the south point, will be at the place of the ecliptic where the galactic center projects to. But it's our day and age now with the south point on the galactic cross. Here's 2058. You can see, even in that short amount of time, the south point's no longer on the cross. 2039. These are very important times given the eclipse that's coming up. 1998. Now, this is when the astronomers say 98, 99, this galactic alignment, the solstice points and the galactic cross were most configured. 1982, another very important time in this transmission. 1950, now we're a little far back. See how the south point isn't there? I mean, precession is slow, but we move through time. So here's 2012, and it's not just that year that the December solstice sun is on this galactic cross in the mouth of the cosmic serpent. The range that I use, 1975 to 2025. So we're very much in it still. I'm going to show you a very powerful alignment in 2025. Now we're 90 minutes in, and I would love to go another 15. So if that's not okay, may somebody please speak from the heavens. And if it is okay, let's continue. Sorry to take so long, but we're talking about eons. All right. Here was December solstice 2019, the sun in the mouth of the cosmic serpent, right? A once in 26,000 year alignment and for a short period of time. And here's 2020. How can we tell? Well, look at that near occultation of Jupiter and Saturn there, who happen to conjoin in the first degree of tropical Aquarius, as we know, on December solstice 2020. And of course, this year features strong alignments of Jupiter and Saturn, of Jupiter and Pluto, and Saturn and Pluto. And an amazing thing is the Saturn-Pluto synodic cycle, which is anywhere from 32 to 38 years because of Pluto's wonky, crazy, eccentric orbit, elliptical orbit. We are on the period of that dance between Saturn and Pluto that happens to coincide with eclipse cycles. So astrologers, of course, have been talking about the power of 2020. We are surprised and not surprised by everything that's happening now. But I want to tune you into this mystical truth of something much longer than Saturn and Pluto, or Jupiter and Pluto, or Jupiter and Saturn, even through the ages of the elements, or Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, much longer. We're talking about once in this way in 26,000 years, the solstice suns and the solstice points, Gaia's spine, aligning to the galactic cross. So this is that galactic center side. Let's go the other way to the sacred hoop, where we find these Gemini Knights. That's an image from Chartres Cathedral, by the way. And there's a long transmission at geminibrett.com called 2020 Revelations, where I get into this material in a different temple. And I go to Chartres Cathedral. We're going to go to a more modern space at the end here. So let's tune into some of these transmissions we've heard from already. Osiris, Orion. Orion, right, whose belt stars are mapped as above, so below as the three pyramids of Giza. Those three stars, the Maya hearthstone surrounding the smoke of creation, the Orion Nebula, and Orion's sword, or Osiris's golden phallus, from which the sun, Horus, in his immaculate conception, was born of a virgin. And in our day and age, and it only happens in this way for a short window of time every 26,000 years, the north lean of Gaia's spine, and always 0 degrees tropical Capricorn, the north point, the cardinal point, is aligned to this sacred place of space on the hand of the high man, according to the language of the Celtic prophecies. The sacred hoop of stars, as described by the Lakota. I really recommend this great book, Lakota Star Knowledge. I could say by Ronald Goodman, but it's really a dude going to speak with elders about this star map that was found and hearing so much about the Lakota mysteries. They say that this place is where our souls come from. And there are, I'll say it this way, ancient mystery traditions that agree from the Western realms, or the realms of Kemet, of the land we now call Egypt, that our souls come from the silver gate, or the silver key of St. Pete, which is the galactic cross on this side of the sky, on Orion's club. And that we go to the Golden Gate. And the Lakota agree. They say that this sacred hoop that our souls come through is also the place where we will go to be purified. It is the Inipi, the sweat lodge in the sky. The head of the constellation we call the Lion is the fire pit. And the stones come from the fire pit. And we walk into the sweat lodge, the Inipi, to be purified so that we can move on the spirit road, which is the Milky Way. And they just say to somewhere that sets in the southwest. That, my friends, in our day and age is the galactic center, the Golden Gate, the place where our souls will go. So our sun comes from the sacred hoop soul. And we're going here to galactic center. In our day and age, the solstice suns are aligned to these gates. So what about this lion? Let me read one more of Rudyard's criterion for the turning of the ages. And it has to do, shockingly, with Orion. So the great star Betelgeuse in the constellation Orion will enter next century the sign Cancer, longitude 90 degrees. Thus, it will pour its energies upon the summers of our northern hemisphere, and this will be one of the factors pinpointing the beginning of the so-called Aquarian age. He's looking to the right place, and let me show you another way to see it. So there's Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse in the year 2089 will process into projections to the tropical sign of Cancer. Now, Betelgeuse is very far from the ecliptic plane, about 16 degrees away, but through perpendicular projection, it will be then. This is where Betelgeuse is now, 89 degrees in 2 minutes. Okay, that's 29 degrees tropical Gemini by projection. But this is what I want to tune you into. In our day and age, Orion's belt rises like a pillar due east in the northern hemisphere and sets horizontally into the horizon. In the southern hemisphere, the opposite is true. It rises like this and sets like a pillar. In our day and age, this is a beautiful celestial symbol of our current state in the precessional year, the great year. Let me show you an image from like the other side of the cycle, okay? 13,000 years from now or 13,000 years ago. At that time, look at how close to south Orion's belt rises. So in the northern hemisphere at that time, Orion's belt spends like literally like 3 hours above the horizon. Now, 12 hours. Why? Because every star on the celestial equator is above the horizon, no matter where you are, for 12 hours and below for 12, right? How can we see this? Oh, wait. I mean, if only there was an esoteric cult who was hip to this. And built temples aligned to stars in this way. This is the Washington Monument. This strange phallus, right, in the governmental center of the United States. I want to just take a moment to say, I'm going to tune you in to some of the mysterious star alignments, and I feel they were very much intentional. It doesn't mean I think they were known now. It certainly does not mean I'm trying in any sense to like exalt these so-called forefathers on some fucking throne, pardon me, right? Like slave owning, genocidal project of the so-called New Atlantis. There's so much blood on the hands of this thing. Could it ever come through? What was the intent? I don't know. So please don't feel that that's where I'm after, what I'm getting after here. I do think that this is a powerful thing, and I was amazed to discover it. This is the Abe Lincoln Memorial. Lincoln looks like the Emperor card, I think. Look at the feet, but it's about Aries, which we saw is the east sign, right? So where Lincoln sits on his throne, he's looking due east at the pillar of the Washington Monument that rises, right? Orion's belt rises on that pillar. And I believe this is a symbol of our day and age now. If we look from above the the Lincoln Memorial, we're looking due east at the Washington Monument. The memorial itself was built to look like the Parthenon in Athens, where we began our journey with the sunrise of the sun on the day cross. But let's see how Washington, D.C. was tuned into this sun on the galactic cross. Over there towards the north, the White House, and towards the south, the Jefferson Memorial, which is built to look like the Pantheon in Rome, which, by the way, like the Jefferson Memorial, is staring at an obelisk. It's just that one was stolen from Egypt, and this was built to look like one. Looking from the other side, this is the United States Capitol building, which looks due west through the phallus, if you will, towards the Lincoln Memorial. And now to the north is the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue, and to the south, the Jefferson Memorial on Maryland Avenue. The three temples representing the three belt stars of Orion. And there's more. At the top of the Capitol building, which is meant to be the people, the seat of Congress, right, stands the goddess, America, freedom. 19 feet tall. There's a law that no statue in DC can be taller than that goddess. 19, the Metonic cycle, sun and moon and earth, friends. She's staring right at the June solstice sunrise. She will be looking at the rising sun before this great eclipse, this most powerful astronomical alignment of our day and age, I feel. The other way, the December solstice sunrise, the south point rise every day, illuminates the torch at the top of the Library of Congress. But of course, that's just a coincidence, right? I mean, it's not like the Library of Congress has any esoteric, oh, wait, the floor is the zodiac on a square. I have to say that this, and by the way, 19 rays in the geometry of the sun inside, the Metonic cycle, this square zodiac at the Washington, D.C.'s Library of Congress has been one of my great teachers. It is the one that taught me that the zodiac is a directional phenomenon. Here we find the image of Virgo and Libra aligned due west, as it is. So when we look west in DC, I mean, in DC, you'll find some very strange thing. A lot of researchers have called attention to this pentacle, especially given that one of its vertices is the White House, in that the White House is looking due north 1 mile exactly to the so-called House of the Temple, the headquarters of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, complete with sphinxes and a crazy like phoenix gate and other strange stuff, and built to look like Nebuchadnezzar's tomb, and we could go on and on and on. Further up that road is Meridian Hill Park. Now, this was meant to be the meridian of the world, according to those who built DC, and they got 1 vote. France got 3. Greenwich Meridian, as you know, won the gig, right? So here at Meridian Hill Park, on this meridian, 16th, we find a 13th stage fountain, which from above looks like an Egyptian ankh. And at the top of that fountain is Joan of Arc. What's that posture? What constellation is that? Orion. And she is staring at the height of the light, the glory of the king, if you will, the culmination due south of the June solstice, which of course in the northern hemisphere is summer solstice. And in our day and age sits on the sword or the club of Orion. Here's a more famous pentacle in DC, of course, the Pentagon. Do you know that this was in many parts designed by the President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was a master mason? Do you know that he had it moved from where it was supposed to be, like in the last stages? Do you know that the units of which it is constructed to are the megalithic yard, the same units employed by stone circle builders and pyramid builders around the globe? Interesting. Do you know that the White House aligns right through one of its vertices? And by the way, on that azimuth, the Phoenix sets in our day and age. Through one of the sides, we find the alignment of the Pentagon, the place of war, and the Capitol building, so-called We the People. Is it? The Capitol building sees the Scorpion constellation set on the Pentagon. The Pentagon sees the Ram constellation rise on the Capitol building. Ram, Scorpion, traditionally, Aries, Scorpio, Mars, the people in the place of war, which robbed this design of Venus's dance. The compass in the streets of DC Maryland Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue, at azimuths 20 degrees north and 20 degrees south of due west from the Capitol building, which is the alignments of west, the setting of Orion's belt, perfectly west, flattened to the horizon, the three temples, but the White House and the Jefferson Memorial on the compass, the Jefferson Memorial aligned to the setting of Sirius, Isis, the brightest star, and the White House aligned to the setting of Aldebaran, the royal star, the eye of the bull. Is that a coincidence? I think not. Let's replace that compass with the cross. And we'll tune in here and we see an interesting geometry. Washington Monument pointing, you can see the sundial, right? Any stick in the ground. And it's about midday because the sun is just about pointing due north. That's midday in the northern hemisphere. But we see this line to the White House. We can go exactly south to the Jefferson Memorial. And it's often said that the Washington Monument, this phallus in the vesica, interesting, was meant to be on that red line, on that meridian that also goes to the house of the temple and to Joan of Arc at Meridian Park. But the ground was too soft because this is reclaimed land from the river of the Potomac. I disagree. I don't think this was a mistake because, oh my, what would Orion say? This is exactly the geometry of Orion's belt stars. I mean, has that ever been done by some esoteric star cult? Yeah. The so-called King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid might just be a stargate to Orion if you believe some of the tales told by those who have had the honor of spending the night there. And Giza, the Great Pyramids, and DC, the White House, Washington Monument, and Jefferson Memorial are equally geometrically aligned to Orion's belt stars. And I learned this amazing thing building this presentation to show this to you. Not only are they aligned to the three belt stars geometrically on Earth, as above, so below, they're also aligned, right, to these azimuths of Sirius, Aldebaran, the neighbors of Orion, and to Orion's belt, Jefferson Memorial, Lincoln Memorial, White House, the so-called President's Palace. But as above, so above, because what I learned from this, like all Washington aside, is that these three stars, Sirius, Orion's belt, and Aldebaran, they map the same geometry as Orion's belt stars. It's like literally as above, so above. And I don't know what to say about that, but I find it amazingly trippy. So what I can say is that I don't feel in any regard this honoring of the contraparallels of Sirius and Aldebaran around Orion's belt in these three temples that are configured to Orion's belt geometry is in any way a coincidence. Do I think Trump is hip to this? Do I think Obama is hip to this? Probably not. Maybe. What does it mean? I don't know. Go watch my 2020 Revelations video at GeminiBrett.com. You'll see me doing the same explorations at Chartres Cathedral. There's so many temples on Earth. There's so many mysteries. The greatest mystery in DC, I'll show you as we close. But I want to show you first why I tuned into 1982 earlier. And to 2039 and 2058, because we will also have solstice eclipses like we do this year of 2020. But in 2039 and 2058, we've now slipped to the point where Gaia's spine and the solstice points, the north-south points, are no longer aligned to the galactic cross. They were aligned in 82 when we had a partial solar eclipse on the galactic cross. And for some of you, Orion's going to look upside down. Why? Because this happened in the southern hemisphere sky, as did this one. So I've been advertising this 2020 thing as the most powerful astronomical alignment of our time. Maybe it was this one, actually, because this year it's an annular solar eclipse. And in the year 2001, on June Solstice, the hand of the high man, glory of the king for the northern hemisphere, like Jerusalem and DC and Chartres, right? The height of the light. The hand of the high man, sacred hoop, total solar eclipse. This was the eclipse, before this event of 9/11. No longer are there twin towers near that image of what reaching the sword to the sky. Does that look like Orion and the twins to you? It does to me. It doesn't anymore. Now replaced by what? One world tower. I feel that it is time for us to take our energy back from those who would wish to dream the dream for us. I know everyone tuned into this is completely alive in this way and helping others help themselves to awaken and awaken and release themselves from the nightmare that the dystopian technocrats would want for us. We cannot wait for the new earth to birth the new earthling. It is the new earthling that will birth the new earth. And my friends, this is the gateway. And if you're listening to this after June 21st, 2020, you didn't miss it. We are in this powerful alignment as prophesized in the Bible, in so many ancient texts. How in the Bible? Well, let me tune you into the hand of the high man. And I learned this underneath this goddess at the Capitol building. Because when you walk inside, you will see in the rotunda the statue of George Washington looking up at this painting by Constantino Brumidi, who was broken out of Vatican prison, where he was in prison for his Masonic thing. And he was broken out to paint this. And it's not just that painting on the top, which is, by the way, George Washington becoming a god. What's that about? But the frieze here, where every image, and these should be erased, are images of so-called contact. And so here, a meeting that never happened between Cortez, the invader, and Montezuma II. But what I want to call your attention to, of course, is that Mexica sunstone. So we're talking about the turning of the ages. In DC, in the Capitol building. So this painting is called the Apotheosis of George Washington, which literally means Washington becoming a god. In his military regalia, surrounded by angels, one blowing the trumpet, one holding the sword. Above this goddess called Freedom America. What's that look like to you, friends? Sitting on a rainbow? Many images of the second coming of Christ have looked this way. What is that about? The angels, the rainbow, the sword, the acacia. So I said earlier that the when in the Bible was spoken in the next pages after the Last Supper water bearer thing. Jesus is on trial. The priests are trying to get him to publicly blaspheme so they can justify his coming crucifixion. Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, said Jesus, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. You know, anyone who's gotten away from the bright city lights knows the clouds of heaven are the Milky Way. What is the Mighty One? Orion, the right hand of the Mighty One. This is the June solstice eclipse. Let's say it's the solstice, the June solstice suns between 1975 and 2025. It's this period of time we're in it. But there are these acupuncture points in 82, 2001, 2020. Should Scorpio Brett say perhaps 82, the US government freed the vaccine manufacturers from any potential lawsuit for their crimes? That 2001, another thing was advanced in that way. That 2020, interesting. Should I say that 82, the birth of personal computing, 2001, the fucking Patriot Act, in 2020, probably imposed tracking devices to keep you safe from the pandemic? Maybe I should get back to Gemini, Brett. What happened for you in 82? Were you around in 2001? What is that wave? What is that rhythm? What does it want from you now? It is time for us to shift. 72 stars. One for each year required for 1 degree of precession. This, my friends, is a star map. And after I saw it for the first time, I received a dream from Hermes who said, you know those stars. It's the sacred hoop. It's a precessional map tuning us into the sacred hoop, the winter hexagon. It's aligned not only geometrically, more loosely so than it is mythically. Mercury at the top representing the twins constellation, I want to go back so we can see that, okay, with these twin angels. We see Poseidon and Venus here. We see Pallas Athena with Ben Franklin. The rainbow here, Ceres, right, with Persephone, and 7 folks. And then here, Hephaestus. I'm mixing Roman, Latin, and Greek, my bad. Anyway, you know where I'm coming from. There's this one like new goddess here, America, playing the part of Orion. Well, Mercury with the twins, why? Gemini, right? Procyon, the little dog with Poseidon, because he lost the competition for the great democratic city of Athens, which is named after Athena, the big dog, Sirius, Isis. The rainbow heading over to Aldebaran is the Milky Way. Ceres with the 7, that's the Pleiades, right? Taurus, the goddess of the crops. Auriga, who built the chariots for the gods, or the charioteer, Hephaestus, the one who built the chariots. And here we have America, freedom, playing the part of Orion, and Washington sitting on the hand of the high man. So a few more minutes. Sorry to take so much of your time. I hope you're enjoying the ride. Declaration of Independence, a chart here on the lower left. That's the Sibley chart, regardless of what time you want to use. And that one does really seem to resonate with the 2001 happening, 9/11 happening. But on that date, regardless of time, look who's right on the hand of the high man in the sacred hoop. Oh, Mars, as they're declaring war, basically. And we also see Venus and Jupiter right there at the galactic cross, which you can see the 0 Cancer point had not yet aligned to the hand of the high man, right? That's our time now. The sun was in the mix. United States Constitution, Jupiter precisely at the hand of the high man. And there are statues that are trying to play George Washington as the role of Zeus. George Washington's very mysterious death, where he was leeched and bled to death, maybe because the Stargate was open. Jupiter, the next time, 12 years later, on the hand of the high man in the sacred hoop. He was meant to be buried in that Capitol building, so they say. I think like the so-called tomb of the Great Pyramid, this was a so-called tomb for initiation rites. Now, supposedly, it's a storage unit. And he was buried in Mount Vernon. So let's do a little astrology as we close out, because I'm going to show you another timing. Now, we usually say that Jupiter's orbit is 12 years. It's actually more like 11.86. And it's actually this, 83 sevenths. How do we know? Because every 83 years, we have our 7th Jupiter return, and it is perfect synodic return. Now, you're probably not going to live more than one of those. But the United States has lived through 2. So you can see these. I'm going to kind of clear this out to just the sun and Jupiter, where we see how strong these Jupiter synodic returns are at 83-year increments. 1859 was John Brown's body, which led to the Civil War 2 years later, which eventually led to the abolishment of slavery, at least of legal slavery. 1942, the second United States Jupiter synodic return. We entered World War II, and in so many ways got on this geopolitical world stage. And the third one comes our way in 2025, which is the end of the range that I use for the galactic alignment. I mean, if you believe the hype, we did away with slavery, and then we fought the great evil genocide, you know, of Hitler and crew. Look at what's happening on the streets today, because obviously there's a lot more work to do, but we do see a wave here. We are in a powerful gateway, a sacred alignment, and it is tuning into and remembering the sacred practice of embodied astrology that will open our eyes to this happening. So in the end here, I just want to give thanks to Daniel Gemario at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, who was the first astrologer to notice that the solstice points were precessing to the galactic crosses, who taught me about these mysteries And I've added this piece that I was informed by these weird builders of DC, which resonates with this biblical prophecy. So who is this George Washington character? I'm in no way trying to celebrate him like some Jesus Christ. But I do think that he was meant, in a sense, to represent the people, and not just American people, in this mystical imagery, and that the transmission is this. As the prophecies have said, we are the ones we've been waiting for. The avatar for the new age is you, is each of us. And it is time for us to remember and walk in that sacred way. It is time for us to go to the ones who have not been killed in these genocide projects and learn again how to listen to the earth. It is time for us to honor those facilities that are awakening in us individually. And even if that means we're a freak and different than the other people, to do that. In other words, it's time to be an astrologer, but it's time to take this seriously. This is a powerful gateway, and we can dream in a new world that is not the new world order of the Illuminati crew, but rather one of beautiful light. And that's my prayer. And so I appreciate you spending so much time with me today. I went a lot longer than I had said that I would. So thank you to Linda and to EA Zoom Meetings for hosting me and hanging in there. And for any of you who are watching now or in the future, please reach out to me at geminibrett.com. Let me know what you think. Add your piece to the puzzle, and let's do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gemini. Thank you from all of us.
Yes, thank you, Gemini.
All right, friends, I will see you in space.
Thank you so much.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.